The Tzeentch Chaos Army is on its way to Total War Warhammer, but what kind of units might it have? Well, that's the question I'm going to try and answer today with the help of this image, which I must give a quick shout out to the guy who made this. I asked him if he minded if I used it. He said he was fine. It turns out he actually has his own little YouTube channel. It's very small and he's only got a couple of videos, but they're really good quality videos. He's got one all about the lore and the geography of the Darklands. Worth checking out if you're interested, as obviously Warhammer 3 is coming and the Darklands are probably coming with that. Good one to check out if you want to brush up on your Darklands knowledge. I'll whip that in the description and remind you at the end. Now for the image itself, it's a collection of the tabletop units, obviously, from various editions, so it'll be all things that CA might use to build Tzeentch's army. I've done a bit of research on them all, but if you know anything that you'd like to add, please chuck it in the comments. Now then, to Tzeentch's army, what units might it have? Well, let's start at the top with the category of named characters. This is probably legendary lords to us. We're going to go left to right with this, so we're starting off with Kairos Fateweaver. Now this guy, I do not think is going to make it into the game, because, quite frankly, he sounds a little bit OP, because he knows every spell in existence and can see the future. However, even having two heads, he is blind though, so he can't actually see the present and the time as it passes, he can only see the future. So for those reasons, it seems like it would be hard to have him as a battlefield unit in Total War, especially if he knows every spell, because you can't give him every lore book. Although maybe they could just give him 2 lore books. It would be nice to have another lord with that feature. Currently only Manfred has 2 lore books, so it would be good if he maybe had 2 lore books, even if they were both mixed and he had a whole bunch of different spells you could choose from. That would be a really nice, slightly different feature to a Total War lord. But Kairos Fateweaver, probably too OP to make it as a lord. Because I imagine if you can see the future, if you can see that you're going to lose a battle, then why would you bother turning up? Can't lose if you don't participate. Moving along to the Changeling, you can see on the right here. This fella seems like a much better candidate for a legendary lord. He's known as the ultimate trickster, so that could pave the way for some really fun mechanics potentially. Lots of traps and decoys perhaps, something like maybe what Alithanar has, where he can create a double of himself. Or perhaps as he is the Changeling, he'll have different forms that you can switch in between. An infantry footlord like we see him here, or maybe able to turn into a flying unit so he can get out of there if he needs to, or he can even turn into a greater demon and be an absolute massive savage. So yeah, seems like the Changeling could be a really fun opportunity for CA to make a lord that is really quite different and has some really fun mechanics, as this fella is all about playing those malicious tricks. Moving right along, we have the Blue Scribes flying on their Disc of Tzeentch, this magical flying disc they're sat on. As you can see, they're 2 little fellas, 2 blue horrors. One apparently frantically writes stuff with a Lord of Change's feather, by the way, and the other one reads it out, checking for mistakes, and in doing so casts magic, harming anybody in range. So these, again, a nice potential lord, obviously going to be a caster. Hopefully we do see this unit. It looks really cool. It would be really different as a unit, as a lord unit, I should say. And it almost sounds like their use of magic is almost a bit random, which sounds like they could have a mechanic where they just do randomly use magic, or they have some little kind of AoE spells that goes on around them, kind of like the Thunderous one for the Lizardmen where lightning randomly comes down around it, maybe something like that. But that's the Blue Scribes, and lastly I'm on Chakai. Now this guy I can't really find any information on. I think he's really quite old in terms of Warhammer Edition, I mean, although age-wise I think he's supposed to be a really old, wise Lord of Change. So not a lot to go on with him. He doesn't even have a page on the Warhammer wiki, so not a lot to go on. And if we are going to see a Lord of Change, it's probably more likely that we're going to see this fella that we already know about. Recognize him? No? Here's a hint. Sarthorial the Everwatcher, of course, already in Total War Warhammer under the Warriors of Chaos banner. Will he stay there in that faction, or will he be moved over to the new Tzeentch faction as a legendary lord? Although maybe this isn't Sarthorial we're looking at here, and it's just another Lord of Change. But either way, we know what to expect from this kind of Birdman unit. A strong caster who's a bit of a nightmare to get a hold of. That's Sarthorial. Now if we boogie over to our right, we'll see the Demon Prince of Tzeentch and the Demon Prince of Tzeentch with wings. In theory, the same guy, one with wings, one without. Either way, a big massive bloodthirster type dude. Probably going to be pretty damn good in melee, but as Tzeentch is all about the magic, probably going to have some magical properties as well. Magical damage is the obvious one, maybe some bound spells. But I imagine if these do make it into Total War Warhammer, it'll only be one of them. They won't have a winged and unwinged version. I'd imagine more likely that the winged version would go in the game. Depends if they have a lot of flying lords and stuff already, but big, strong, single entity, powerful monsters, generic lord options, for Tzeentch. And that brings us along to the heroes section, where we see the Herald of Tzeentch. Now this is a unit we actually know is in Total War Warhammer 3 from a recent blog post that CA did, although the appearance is quite different because it looks like this. That's the concept art from the blog itself, so we know how it's going to look, and also that it's going to be a caster of some kind. They mention on the blog lots of magic to back it up, so going to be a caster hero probably. Hard to tell how big it is though. It looks quite small to me, like human size, but it could be really massive or just much bigger, like a monstrous infantry size. And this is very different from the seemingly quite large image that we see before us now. There's also a herald on a disc, which is probably that disc of Tzeentch again, much like the blue scribes had. So likely he'll have this flying disc to get himself around, or at least be a mount option. But that's not the only potential mount he could have, because there is the herald on a burning chariot as well, with these snake-like screamer creatures pulling it along. So that could be another potential option, a chariot unit for that herald of Tzeentch. So we know we've got a magical hero, most probably a hero anyway, with some possible mount options. And then next to that, possibly one of the coolest units on this roster, the Exalted Flamer. You can see this big bundle of magic with flames coming out of it all over the place. This thing I can definitely see in Total War Warhammer. They're also known as Burning Horrors, so maybe that's what they'll be called instead. And apparently their flames aren't actually fire as such, but more a cloud of chaos energy that warps reality. And as a being that's fully made of magic, they're not quite going to be a physical body, so maybe going to be a kind of ethereal unit with a big physical resistance perhaps, or maybe some new kind of being, some new kind of unit, not ethereal but something else, magic being. Maybe you'll need magical attacks to deal with them, or maybe some other kind of attack, who knows. But that is the Exalted Flamer, a potential hero option for Tzeentch. Moving on to the infantry now, with pink horrors and blue horrors. Now starting off with pink horrors, they're a shapeless mass of solid magic that undulates and transforms, ever changing as they go. And they fucking love a bit of spell casting. It fills them with joy. And I'm not sure whether that means that they cast magic themselves or whether they just like being around magic. Perhaps any tabletoppers can clear that one up for me, but overall they're just strange little magical weirdos. And what's more, when a pink horror dies, it splits into two blue horrors. And these little fellas are quite different from pink horrors. They are, as described, sullen and malicious like evil-tempered children. They sneer and grumble their way through battle. So they sound like angry little fellas that get all up in melee, and they can apparently explode as well, so that could potentially be something that happens in Total War. So these two units seem like they'll be one in the same. Pink horrors will fight, and when they will die, they'll explode into blue horrors. Not sure how that will work in a single unit though. But we do kind of have this sort of thing already with the Hellpit Abomination. When it dies, it turns into a unit of Skaven slaves. So kind of like that. But perhaps a mechanic of changing one pink horror into two in a unit of 12 or 50 or 100, whatever, would be too difficult, and maybe they'll just be separate units, pink horrors and blue horrors. We shall see. Now also in the infantry section, we've got Flamers, or those burning horrors again. Pretty much going to be the same idea as the Exalted Flamer we saw just now, but with that one being a much larger, maybe hero type unit. These are going to be an infantry of smaller type beings, maybe monstrous infantry size, a group of them all together as one unit. Seems like a likely candidate to make it onto the roster, much like that Exalted Flamer hero, who I guess they will function very much the same as magical being, fire but not fire, weird damage. Or maybe we'll just see one of them. Maybe we'll see these flamers and not the hero version, or the other way around. Moving along to the cavalry and chariot section with the burning chariot, which we saw a little bit earlier. This one, pulled by those screamer snaky type creatures, is actually ridden by an Exalted Flamer, the unit we saw just now. And there's even a few blue horrors on there too. So perhaps if the Exalted Flamer is a hero, this will be a mount option for him. Or perhaps he will be mounted on this and that'll be it. There will be no foot option. But either way, if there's a burning chariot with an Exalted Flamer on the back, there's going to be lots of magical attacks that fire, magical chaos fire, whatever the hell it is. He could be hurling magical bolts from there, so maybe it'll be a bit of a ranged chariot potentially, with a 360 missile attack. But overall, a pretty powerful looking magic heavy chariot. Now, if we move over to the other two units in this section, the Chariot of Tzeentch and the Changebringers. These two units I can't really find anything on. If you try to search for Chariot of Tzeentch, it just comes up with the Burning Chariot that we just saw. And the Changebringers, the only thing I can find is that they are flamers on discs of Tzeentch, which you can kind of see. The model looks really old and hard to really tell what they are, but I guess those little orange things on top are flamers, and then there's discs underneath them. Perhaps that's what we're looking at. But it could just be the color choice of whoever painted that model that's making it a little bit harder to recognize from everything else, as normally they'd probably be blue with orange flames and have purple discs like all the other units we've seen in this picture. So maybe that's just what's throwing it off. But the little flamer guys on discs sounds pretty cool, so maybe the Changebringers will be in the game in some form. Could give Tzeentch a kind of cavalry type unit. If you know anything more about these two units, do drop it below. And with that, we roll on to the last section, all about the monsters, beginning with the Screamers, those things we saw pulling the chariots, also known as Sky Sharks. And much like most of the Tzeentch army, they are beings of pure magic. They ride upon the winds of magic, looking for prey to munch down in the name of Tzeentch. So these seem a likely unit to make it in, as they're probably going to be on all those chariots. Seems like a good choice to make into a flying unit. As an individual unit, they can fly around, looking to get into melee. They've got those big tusks on the front, good for slamming into stuff, I imagine. So yeah, Screamers seem like they could definitely be on the roster. And then we have the Fireworm, this mad mash of faces and claws, it seems. Could be a cool single entity monster option for the Tzeentch army. They are a bit of a changeling, so they can come in many forms. They mindlessly charge into battle, blasting fire out all over the place. Probably chaosy fire as well, so it's going to be a bit weird. But it sounds like a good potential option for the Tzeentch army in Total War. And then also in the monster section, we've got the Exalted Greater Demon of Tzeentch, who looks like another sartorial type Lord of Changey Birdman. So we know kind of what to expect from these, but the other thing that we don't know about is the new magic that's going to come with Warhammer 3. And as Tzeentch's faction is very magic centric, they'll probably have a new lore or two with who knows what kind of magic. Maybe some of you will know from the tabletop if Tzeentch had some spells there. Perhaps you can tell us all about them. And our last unit, the Soul Grinder of Tzeentch. These things look freaking awesome, and this is a confirmed unit because this was also in CA's blog. Here's that concept art, which says sporting incredible long-range firepower. So this boy is actually going to be a ranged unit, probably with some melee capabilities as well though, because look at him. Whether that'll be kind of missile range or artillery kind of range is yet to be seen. Or maybe it's already known in tabletop. Let me know if you do know. So that is the Soul Grinder, and that all together is all of the units we have on this table. There may be some more that we don't know about. Let me know if you know of any other units that you think might be in there. But from this we can see a lot of potential pretty cool stuff in the Tzeentch army. I wasn't even really fussed about this army at all, to be honest, but seeing some of this has really kind of made me a little bit interested, even though I generally don't like magic and magic heavy factions. Tzeentch has got some pretty cool stuff and some pretty nasty, I imagine, tricks up his feathery sleeves. So there we go. I hope you've enjoyed this. I will be doing another one of these for Nurgle and for Slaanesh as well. Don't forget to check out that video in the description as well if you want to learn more about the Darklands. Thanks for watching. See you in the future.